Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Eric May, and on behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you have joined us for our next live presentation from CleanTech Lithium Plc. Before I introduce our speaker, a few points to note. Please submit your questions in the question box to the left of the slides. If you're interested in scheduling a meeting with CleanTech Lithium, please click on the Schedule Meetings tab found in the platform navigation bar. You'll be able to view the company's availability and submit a meeting request. On a final note, all of today's presentations will be recorded and available for 24/7 replay. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Steve Kessler, Executive Chairman of CleanTech Lithium Plc, which trades on the OTCQB venture market with the symbol CTLHF and on the LSE under the symbol CTL. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Eric. I'd like to present CleanTech Lithium and our aim to produce green lithium for the EV future that is just about on us. We have projects in Chile. We have three. The two most advanced projects, Laguna, Verde, and Francisco Basin, both lie at about 4,300 meters. And we have a third greenfield project, Yamara, about 600 kilometers to the north. From exploration work that was carried out last year, we declared 2 million tons of JORC LCE resource. We've continued that exploration during this drilling season and expect by the middle of this year to have significantly increased the size of that resource. Unlike most lithium companies operating in brine areas, we control the entire basins at Laguna, Verde, and Francisco Basin. And that is very, very important when considering using the technology that we will, which is direct lithium extraction with re-injection of the brine back into the aquifer. Being at 4,300 meters, there's very little in the way of flora and fauna, and there are no people living anywhere within 100 kilometers of the project. We have a board and management that's very well experienced in developing major projects in Chile. We only listed on the AIM market in March last year, and during that raise and a secondary carried out in November, we raised just about 22 million pounds to finance this year's program of resource drilling and technical work. The company has about 106 million shares outstanding. Our two brokers are Canaccord Genuity and Fox Davis. We have a current market cap of somewhere in the region of 50 million pounds. Major shareholders are Regal Funds from Australia, about 16%. Management and board hold about 20%. And then a number of institutions hold smaller amounts. It was very interesting during this course of this year to see CleanTech Lithium coming out of the traps from virtually nowhere to be recognized by Canaccord Genuity as their top pick of the battery companies for 2023. Forbes magazine carried us as one of the top 4 lithium companies to invest in. And then mining.com has also put us in their top 10 of lithium companies. We all know the demand of lithium is increasing tremendously. It's absolutely essential for the batteries for electric vehicles. Particularly in the EU, we're seeing the projected forecast demand for lithium products, hydroxide carbonate, increasing 20 times during the course of the next decade. And in Europe, this is very, very much a target market for us. Not only does the EU intend to decarbonize its economy, but it's pushing particularly the car manufacturers to ensure that the supply chains of materials to feed those batteries are also coming from carbon neutral sources. If we go to the actual projects, the first one, Laguna Verde, is the most advanced. So we control the entire basin. We put in 4 drill holes last year and declared 1.5 million tons LCE, of which just over half of that is in the measured and inferred category. We've actually completed that drilling program this year with 2 additional drill holes and expect to increase the size of that resource, but more significantly, increase the size of the measured and indicated resource which will feed into the pre-feasibility study. The project has got geothermal influence, so the temperature of the water is 20 to 30 degrees, which is absolutely ideal for the use for the DLE process. We're doing environmental baseline work at the moment. We completed the first scoping study to have the first assessment of the economic value of the project, and this was declared in January this year. And looking at the project at a base case of 20,000 tons a year lithium carbonate production, that delivered very, very robust economics. Capital cost just under $400 million. Operating cost just under $4,000 a ton, puts us well into the lowest quartile of cost producers. And using a very conservative lithium carbonate price of $22,500 a ton, very much lower than what we've seen in the past year, and still significantly lower to where we are today. This delivered an NPV at an 8% discount rate of $1.8 billion, IRR 45%, payback just over 1.5 years. Very, very robust. Pre-feasibility study has been commenced using Worley, very experienced doing engineering work for SQM and Albemarle in Chile. That pre-feasibility study is expected to be completed by the end of this year. Our second project, Francisco Basin, is about 100 kilometers to the south of Laguna Verde. We put the first drill hole in last year, declared 500,000 tons of inferred resource before the snows came in and prevented further work. We've gone back in, and there's another 3 holes being drilled in this current season. That'll be finished at the end of this month. So early in the next quarter, we should be declaring a significantly increased resource and the first measured and indicated as well. We started work on the scoping study, certainly using much of the engineering work from Laguna Verde, and we expect that the financial results will be as robust as at Laguna Verde. The grade of the brine here is a bit higher. At Laguna Verde is 200 parts per ppm. Here it's about 300 ppm. And again, environmental baseline work is already ongoing. We have a third project, Yamara, which is at lower elevation, about 1,000 meters, about 600 kilometers north. It's to the northwest of the Salar de Atacama. And the Yamara Basin is very interesting. There's evidence of lithium salt incrustations on surface. And we obtained geophysics from a company doing oil and gas exploration in that area. And that bottom Temline section shows that very light magenta color, very high conductivity, low resistivity, indicative of a highly saline aquifer. So it looks very interesting to us. We've managed to acquire 344 square kilometers of ground in this area. We have the first drill hole going in as we speak. It's making very good progress. And if we find that the brine does contain lithium to the same extent as we have at Laguna Verde and Francisco Basin, this could be a very exciting third project for us. The strategy that we have in the development of the project is to use sustainable technology. Now, clearly, the present method of producing lithium in Chile by using evaporation ponds, this is areas, desert water is very, very scarce, that is no longer environmentally sustainable. And just recently, the government has announced in its national lithium strategy that they will not be permitting more production from evaporation ponds, and all new production must come from technologies such as direct lithium extraction, which conserves water. We expect to complete our pre-feasibility study on Laguna Verde end of this year. We'll then move into the DFS. We are one of the few, if not the only, junior lithium company that has not gone out to seek offtake agreements, non-binding offtake agreements. At that, we believe it is much better positioning for us to establish the size of the resources that we have, determine the economic robustness of the projects, and then post pre-feasibility study, we will then engage with a variety of potential strategic partners to see who is the best place to come into our projects. And in exchange for giving offtake agreement, we would expect them to provide a large chunk of the capital that's needed for construction. Our aim is to bring this first project, Laguna Verde, into production early in 2026. So very fast from our listing last year. Direct lithium extraction, this is the way that brine projects are going in the future. There's a number in Argentina. We are the leading company bringing this technology into Chile. Basically what it is the pumping of the brine containing lithium from the aquifer, passing it through columns containing resin, which are specifically designed to absorb lithium and leave the magnesium, the calcium behind. Then the spent brine minus the lithium is then re-injected into another part of the basin where there will be no dilution of the aquifer where we are pumping. And this is where it's very important to control the basin and to control it. We can control exactly where we extract and exactly where we re-inject. And using DLE, there is no depletion of the underground aquifer whatsoever. The lithium on the resin is then eluted using fresh water, a small amount of fresh water, to have a concentrated eluate of lithium, then further concentrated with reverse osmosis, forward osmosis, and then the conventional cleaning of the final traces of boron, calcium, magnesium, and then precipitation as lithium carbonate to battery grade. We have done this in the laboratory, have shown that the brine is very well suited for making battery grade lithium carbonate. We produced 1 kilogram at the lab scale, and that was certified at better than 99.9% lithium carbonate by independent laboratories in Germany. So here the advantage is minimal water consumption. Now, if we look at Chile, it has the largest reserves. It has the two largest producing companies in Albemarle and SQM, and there are a number of other salars in the country, of which we now have control of three. The national strategy was declared by the president just over a week ago. It did cause a lot of consternation, though, worldwide, by a number of media reports saying this is nationalization. It is not nationalization. What it is the government saying they want to be a participant in the growth of the industry. Chile was the number one producer in the world. It wants to get back up there. And they are saying that they need to get back up there working in public-private partnerships. And that is very good for us. Clearly, the government wants to take majority participation in the very large projects in the Salada, Atacama, maybe Maricunga as well. But they made it very clear that projects such as ours, we are free to go totally independently and make application for our operating contracts from the government. Or we have the option to invite in state entities to be minority participants in the projects, if that is going to be of benefit to the projects, and perhaps there can be incentives to attract them in too. There are other benefits in this new strategy in that there are a number of lithium-bearing salars which are in the hands of state entities, Codelco and Anami, which have not been developed to date. The government is now saying that those entities can invite private participation into their projects. And we believe, being the first mover on the ground with DLE, we have good additional potential to assist those entities in the development of their projects. The politics of the United States and the EU is very important here. In the United States, the Biden administration signed the Inflation Reduction Act last year, and that requires that by 2026, 80% of all materials going into batteries in the United States must come from supply within the United States or from a country that has a free trade agreement with the United States. And currently, the only country that's a producer of lithium carbonate hydroxide at battery grade, which has a free trade agreement with the US, is Chile. So that puts us in a very, very strong position. The Chilean government has been very clear. They strongly want to see investment in Chile. They need the revenues to improve social health services, educational services. So they're very keen to see that the lithium industry in Chile grows very, very rapidly, and they'll do that hand in hand with the private sector. The ESG approach is very important. Not only do we use a minimum amount of water, we aim to run our project 100% on renewable energy. Chile is pretty much a leader in this field. 60% of power today comes from renewables, from hydro in the south and solar in the north, and this is increasing every year. We intend to sign a power purchase agreement with one of those renewable energy companies to be 100% renewable. And again, this feeds very well into the politics of the EU, where they want to see the supply chain decarbonized. When people want to buy lithium in the EU, they know the EU policy on this. They have a choice of buying lithium, which is hard rock mined in Australia, 5% concentrate put on boats to China, converted to carbonate and hydroxide using largely coal-fired energy, so a high carbon footprint, compared to we aim to have a close to zero carbon footprint for our material coming from Chile. People often ask, a small junior company with a market cap of 50 million, how are you going to raise 400 million for each one of these projects? We believe that's comparatively a small amount for what is going to be a strategic mineral going forward for the EV industry. Under Chilean legislation, up to 75% of the capex can come from debt. Clearly, we'll expect to engage with banks or the export credit agencies. We will be looking at potential strategic partners coming into the project, perhaps taking a minority equity stake at a project level, and in exchange for an offtake contract, providing offtake finance and mobilizing the banks in their region to cornerstone a large part of this debt financing. Under the IRA, the US government has put $400 billion of support funding to transition their economy to the new green world. Originally, all of that was specified to be spent only on projects in the United States, but it's very clearly widening out to consider projects outside the United States that is going to be delivering material into the United States. And we're already having discussions with US authorities on that. Then there's a whole host of infrastructure funds, ESG funds, which have got an enormous amount of money wanting to put into projects which will assist the transition to an environmentally sustainable EV future. And clearly, equity, we can go and raise in the markets. We want to minimize that to minimize the dilution to our shareholders. These buttons are just a summary of why we believe this is a tremendous project. We do have a short lead time to production. We're using proven DLE technology. We're working with Sun Resin from China, the largest resin manufacturer and provider of DLE process equipment. They have already delivered 3 plants in China and doing a number of others. Chile has excellent infrastructure, not just energy, it's an interconnected grid, high proportion of renewable energy. We already have the roads and the ports in place, so there's very little requirement for infrastructure. More than that, human infrastructure is fantastic. It's been supporting the mining industry for decades. We expect environmental permits to be very easily obtained in our remote area. The government is supportive. We're financed for the rest of this year, and we'll be starting discussions with strategic partners, potential strategic partners, towards the end of this year. I think that's just about all I've got time for this presentation. I'm very pleased to take any questions. Okay, I'm taking the first question from the top. Can we expect to see a clarification from the Chilean authorities that confirms that lithium projects such as CleanTech's will not be subject to majority control by the government? The market clearly needs official reassurance on this issue. But I think there's been a number of ministers in finance, economic affairs, and mining making clear that the government only wishes to maintain majority in what it considers as strategic lithium assets. Really, that's the Salada Atacama and probably also Maricunga, where Codelco has assets. They've had discussions with us, and clearly there'll be clarification in due course that our projects are going to be considered as able to be developed purely as private or with state minority participation. We have been engaged with state entities since last year, as there can be benefits from bringing in a minority state entity. And members of government have said that bringing in a state entity may provide better incentives than going alone. And it's very clear we will be permitted to go alone if we want to do so. Next question from Paul. How far will your current cash take you? We're financed through to the end of this year. Clearly, we're putting one drill hole in what could be a very exciting project at Yamara. We have indicated to the market that we will be listing on the ASX probably late July, August this year, and depending on what the market is looking at, we may take the opportunity to raise additional funds if we want to accelerate development of Yamara. And clearly we'll need to raise funds for our development program in 2024. Next question. Yamara, Aldo has mentioned doubling the size. Is this still happening? We don't know yet. No, it's a very large land area. If it has the same grade as Francisco Basin and Laguna Verde, it could be very large. It could be larger than the other two projects. Our other projects have 150 square kilometer in area. This one is 340 square kilometers in area. Next, ESG funds. How is your active program going? We are engaging with potential sources of finance. We have not put in place a formal program and actively looking for the funds until such time as that we have the pre-feasibility study in place. But the whole range of export credit agencies, ESG funds, commercial banks, all interested in talking to us and coming into our project. Next question, how significant are the risks of nationalization in the lithium industry of Chile? If so, how bad could it be? This is absolutely not a correct position. A lot of media talking about nationalization. This is not nationalization. Chile, for many decades, has considered lithium as a strategic material and is only to be developed by the state. And it gives operating contracts to private entities to operate on behalf of the state, and in return provides royalties and taxes to the state. What Chile is now doing is saying we want to develop the lithium industry much faster, and we want to work with the private sector in doing that. Now, the Salar de Atacama is a special case, where the operating contracts for SQM expire at the end of 2030 and Albemarle 2042. Clearly, they will be looking to extend those contracts, and the state of Chile have said they want to enter discussions and potentially go into those projects as a partner before the end of those contracts, and then extend the contracts. So clearly, we believe that for a company such as us, the new strategy is very good. We can go alone. We can go in with a minority state entity. We can be invited. We're in a good position to be invited into those lithium assets which are already owned by state entities. So as far as we're concerned, it's all positive. Next question: have you started a PFS with Francisco Basin? No, we're doing the PFS for Laguna Verde. Francisco Basin is a little bit behind. We're doing the scoping study for that at the moment. That should be complete in the third quarter of this year, and then we'll roll that into the PFS. I've explained we're doing that work with Worley on Laguna Verde, and a large part of that work will be directly translatable to Francisco Basin. They're fairly close, at 100 kilometers apart, so there may be potential for synergy between the two projects. I think those are all the questions. I think what could be interesting is to just have a final slide. Is this one, which shows all the DLE projects around the world. We're on that dark blue, looking at a potential 40,000 ton production capacity from Laguna Verde and Francisco Basin. There are 3 projects developed by Sunresin, operational and live in Argentina, and then a whole load of other projects using different DLE technologies. The most interesting factor for us, if you look at our market capitalization, when this was done, $70 million, and our peer group, typical one like Lake Resources in Argentina, with a 25,000 ton a year in their projected capacity. I think they're looking at going higher than that now, but $877 million market capitalization, and all the lithium peers are the same. So we believe by going on the ASX and getting the resource knowledge, which is in the investor base there's a big pool of funds, a lot of knowledge of lithium and DLE in Australia. And we can expect that as we get our information going out in the market, good news flow during the course of this year, we can see potential for significant re-rating of our shares. Right, I think that's the end of it. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening to our story, and I hope you follow it very strongly into the future.